All of humanity's misfortunes stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Human Pulse podcast, where we talk about living well with technology. I'm Fabrice Newman, a tech consultant for small businesses.
And I am Anne Traeger, a leadership performance coach.
This is episode 40, recorded on July 19th, 2026.
Human Pulse is usually never longer than 30 minutes, so let's get started.
So, Anne, let's give some more context to this quote by Blaise Pascal, which was first published in 1670. Let's remind ourselves first who Blaise Pascal was. He was born in 1623. He died in 1662. He was a brilliant French mathematician, physicist, philosopher, and writer who made foundational contributions to both science and Western thought. He invented an early mechanical calculator called the Pascaline and co-founded probability theory, later shifting his focus to profound philosophical and religious writings about the human condition, most notably compiled in his posthumous work, Les Pensées, meaning thoughts. And this particular quote was used by Joan Westenberg in an article titled, Pascal Would Have Thrown Away His iPhone. What a wonderful thought. Let me read the beginning. Quote, "You're standing in a grocery store line. You're waiting for a flight. You're stuck in the passenger seat on a long drive. You reach into your pocket and find it empty. Somehow your smartphone is gone. For a few seconds, your brain short-circuits." End quote. I don't know about you, Anne, but I sure can relate to this.
Okay, there's a word for that. It's called nomophobia, okay, which means that it's that anxiety that you feel about not being able to access your phone. There was a study in 2025. Actually, it was a meta-analysis, so a grouping of a whole bunch of other studies about the topic of nomophobia. And they found that roughly 7 in 10 participants in the different various studies on the topic reported moderate to severe anxiety about being without access to their phones. What have we done?
Yikes. It's true. So even when I try to be conscious of my smartphone usage, it's more often than not a struggle to leave it in my pocket, right? Even during the shortest time breaks, like waiting in line, as she was saying, Joan Westenberg, when there's only one person in front of me, for example, or when getting a cup of coffee ready, which I will admit takes me more than almost 10 minutes to make one because I'm so particular.
We have an episode at the very beginning episodes about your coffee thing.
We have 2 episodes about coffee.
Yes, because I will admit it is our coffee thing. Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so the thing is, it would not be a problem if I found it useful to grab my phone like this, or if it simply brought me joy every time. But even though it sometimes happens, those times when I grab my phone are way too often just a need to plug a hole, right? Basically, what can I do with myself during those few minutes? But that's the thing. Why do I feel this need? And I'm sure I could say, why do we feel this need to grab a device to fill up every second of our life? And maybe even more importantly, and that's what's amazing about it, how is it possible that Blaise Pascal was so right 350 years ago?
Okay, so for me, this is clear. It is because we are distraction machines. Come on, this is one of the reasons we have survived so long as a species. So what if this draw to distraction we feel, that's what you're describing, stems from the part of us that puts us at the top of the food chain? I mean, after all, getting distracted by a rustle in the tall grass over on the savannah used to keep us alive.
I have to admit that I failed to see the parallel between the rustle in the grass and the phone in my pocket.
Well, absolutely, except that your body, your physical body, reacts in exactly the same way. This is what we're talking about, okay? Yeah. It's that ability to be distracted and to pay attention to what's going on around us. And the phone is one of those places where there's stuff going on around us, okay? You know, and there's also something about how the phone is a device that connects us to other people. And social bonding, being connected with other people, even keeping up with the Joneses is another reason we have survived so long. It's because we are a social species. I mean, if I were left out on my own today, without all of this civilization around me, I'd probably be pretty useless and not survive very long. So these are very, very important things to our survival. And there is something physiological going on. Now, I'm not going to go into the great detail about it because I wouldn't be able to describe it, but the quick explanation is related to our dopamine system. Okay, dopamine is a neurotransmitter that helps regulate motivation and learning and attention and the drive to pursue what scientists call anticipated rewards. So this is where we get to the phone, okay? So when you reach for your phone, dopamine is actually helping your brain to anticipate a possible reward, such as, and these are the things that we get distracted by, an interesting message. So distraction, if we want to go back to the rustle in the weeds, it's the interesting message could be a question of survival or not, okay? And what we're interested in is whether or not that interesting message, not so much that it's interesting, but whether it has something to do with our survival. That update, same thing. So there's the survival thing, and then there's the novelty thing, because we love novelty. So all of this is connected, and our brain is like, oh, on the phone, I'm going to get some more novelty or some more, threat assessment.
Or some more of the same.
Or some more of the same. Well, except it's not, like, this is not the thinking brain. This is just dopamine reacting.
Yeah.
And because the reward is uncertain, that is, when you go to the phone, you're not sure you're going to get it. Every time you check sort of reinforces this. It's called a cue action loop. So there's a cue, the phone, is it something? And then an action, you take the action. And so when we get, in a moment of boredom, that usually triggers this, urge to check again. Okay, because maybe, just maybe, we're going to get that little dopamine hit.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a very loose explanation of what's going on. And what that means is that if we want to change that, we have to get pretty clever about it.
Well, thank you. So I'm working on my cleverness. And to be more precise, so regularly I try to change my ways. I go for a walk, for a bike ride, for a jog without my phone. And I removed access to social media from my phone, actually. I use different browsers on my computer so that I'm not connected to social media accounts in my regular one. And I have to launch another one when I want to do social media. So trying to put, intention into it. But I can also see regularly as well that all those uses are creeping back. And it's just like in a video I found a few days ago on the BBC's YouTube channel called The Close. There will be a link in the show notes. It made me laugh out loud. And yes, I see the irony of talking about trying to reduce my usage and finding a video on YouTube somewhat serendipitously. But anyway, still, thanks to this article by Joan Westenberg and this podcast, or actually, is it a broadcast therapy session? I wonder. I'm starting another cycle of reduced usage time on my connected devices. And it's true that it's also summertime when we record this, so it makes it easier without a doubt because there are fewer things to be drawn toward. But so during those times, there is still one connected device I use more. It's my Kindle, my beloved Kindle. Well, thanks to it, I read more, but I, of course, need the connection to transfer books and articles on it, right? But I guess you can agree that it's a very limited connection, which is exactly what I need.
Well, so it's not only about connection. That said, I connect with you about this summer idea. In 2020, I wrote an article on my blog, which we'll link to as well, that started talking about this topic in this way. Okay, quote, "With summer at its peak, I'm contemplating emptiness as it relates to my time, wanting to write in praise of it, only to realize that there is no love lost between me and hollow time, those vacant moments of nothingness," end quote. Okay, that's how I started the article. So, however, 6 years ago.
Yep.
And then I went on to talk about the restlessness that I feel, exactly what Pascal describes about those moments of nothingness. and I describe an experiment of just sitting outside. And of course, I didn't like just sit there and do nothing. I watched butterflies. But even watching butterflies for a few minutes before it didn't take long before my phone drew me in. Okay, and this is someone who has done 10-day meditation retreats. Okay. So,
yeah, what happened to those?
It's all about context, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so anyway, that's that article. I invite people to go and take a look at what I said. Back in the late 4th and early 5th century, Saint Augustine apparently had this like glimpse of the future, of social media. That's the way I describe it. That is the way I describe it. He is often credited with saying, "Complete abstinence is easier than perfect moderation." That attribution to St. Augustine is unverified. However, that is, at least for me, I'm not moderate when I have social media in front of me. I mean, that's why I removed it from all of my devices. I mean, I literally closed all of my accounts on social media because, like, abstinence. Okay. So for me not to get drawn in, I will be honest, I choose not total complete abstinence, but rather creating a lot of friction between myself and my device. So abstinence from much social media, but also a lot of friction between me and my phone, which is what you were describing.
Yep.
You and setting up different browsers, and you actually have to open them up, and it's friction. Okay. Yeah. So I control my environment, and that's what works for me, and it's still hard.
No joke. And let me repeat that it's really well shown in the video animation I mentioned earlier. If we go back to Blaise Pascal's quote, I think one interpretation of it is that we, human beings, are basically afraid to be left alone with our own thoughts. Hence the reflex to grab our phones or to go to YouTube, to social media, what have you. Which brings up another question then. When do we think? And it reminded me when I was thinking about that of the cold open of episode 698 of the Accidental Tech podcast, where one of the hosts mused on the fact that he realized that he was never bored anymore. And if I understood correctly what he said, it was a good thing. Thanks to his devices, he can at any time listen to a podcast, watch a movie, whatever. And all of a sudden it sounded to me very childish, as if being bored was something to avoid at all cost. And honestly, it made me sad. Because if being bored is a synonym to being able to think, then what's wrong with that?
Yeah, I'm reminded of conversations I have with my clients who are all like very busy, generally leaders with a lot of responsibility, and who, they're always saying, I'm so busy all day long. I don't have time, whatever that means. Yeah. That's a whole nother topic, but, I don't have time to think. And so we work on finding time to think because actually that's their job. Anyway, I agree with you. It's not so much about being alone as about being alone with our thoughts and our wandering thoughts. So when we get bored, I also agree that's when we think, and also when we're more creative. Well, when we think in a different kind of way, when different connections are happening in our mind. And I remember, much to our daughter's dismay, when she was younger, I used to tell her just to go out and get bored, and
yeah, those messages you give to your kids that they don't understand and they might understand much later on.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. It might have been trauma. I don't know. Anyway, but to me, I suppose the reason that I sent those messages is because that boredom feels a little bit like it's some kind of luxury that belongs to our youth, in the bygone days. And I don't know. I'm probably just making all that up. It's some narrative I have in my head. And that said, did you know that the brain actually needs time when the mind can wander? There's a book out there called Tinker, Dabble, Doodle, Try by a neuroscientist whose name is Srini Pillai. And he points out the lasting benefits of adding deliberate mind wandering into your schedule. So he doesn't say deliberate boredom, he says deliberate mind wandering. Okay?
Deliberate. So does that mean that you need to use your electronic calendar to block time?
Yeah, there we go. But maybe that's what we need to do. And I think actually it's a really good idea. Just schedule time to be bored, you know? And anyway, he demonstrates in this book how specific kinds of planned non-thinking activities can stimulate a cognitive calm that then kickstarts productivity, strengthens innovation, inspires creativity, and all these things we want.
Absolutely. And you know what? After a couple of weeks of forcing myself to do just that, I can actually tell you that it works.
Yeah, for sure.
I do feel lighter, not trying to make sure that I have something to listen to every second I have, for example. And it led me to write more on my blog, for example.
Yeah, so I
it
mean,
really
this is
feels
so
like a direct connection.
Well, and obviously because we function in cycles of attention and rest and attention and rest, and different kinds of thinking and doing different things all the time. We are cyclical.
Yeah. The other thing is that it seems that we blame technology a lot. And of course, like we just mentioned that there's a lot to say about social media algorithms, which are demonstrably designed to keep our attention from slipping away from our quote unquote news feed.
Yeah.
The news part
Yes.
in it is somewhat questionable sometimes.
Yes, the news has always been very good at playing on our dopamine system.
Yeah.
Yes.
So everything is done to keep us scrolling so that basically we can be shown more ads. That's the ultimate goal, as we know, right? But let's say, I'm sure that algorithms are just the latest tool we found to be distracted. It's always been hard to keep focused for a long time. You said that earlier. And basically you said, actually, our brain isn't designed to stay focused all the time. Which leads to a question I have for you. Is there anything we can do to maybe recalibrate ourselves to accept our condition of thinking beings?
Well, first I'd say that maybe we need to reframe what we think about distraction so that we can consider how to use it to our advantage. Again, it's about agency. It's about not being victims to our distracted mind or victims to, the algorithms, but rather, and also we have to stop feeling guilty about getting distracted because, well, it's a superpower. Okay. So for me, it's all about what we do with our attention, which is very clearly a commodity right now. And actually it is mine to do something with. So there's a very interesting quote from 1971 by a Nobel Prize winning economist whose name was Herbert A. Simon. And he was talking about the attention economy. And he said, quote, "In an information-rich world, the wealth of information means a dearth of something else, a scarcity of whatever it is that information consumes. What information consumes is rather obvious, the attention of its recipients," end quote. So earlier I said we survived because we can be distracted easily. That is, we lose our attention. Our attention goes to something else. And because we are naturally contradictory as human beings, okay, we also survive because we do have an ability to pay attention to important things and ignore the rest. I mean, I ignore what you say to me that I'm not interested, that I don't want to hear, okay? But we all do it.
Not every time, but it does happen.
But we do it all day long. We are constantly deleting information to focus on or to focus on something, okay? And what I'm saying is that we can actually delete information in order to focus on what is important if we decide what important means to us. So in addition to being distraction machines, we are also delete machines, okay? So I'm just saying, let's own it. Let's own these superpowers we have.
I would add to that maybe we can try and be more conscious about the choices we make of the things we want to keep and delete.
Well, exactly, exactly. And that's part of it, is becoming more conscious of what we're doing so that we're not at the mercy of outside influences, but rather we are consciously, intentionally turning our attention to where we want it to be. And possibly that is, right now, I do want to be distracted. Okay, but it's a choice. So rather than being distracted habitually, we choose a moment of distraction, which actually I think is, not only do we need to schedule on our devices time for boredom and not thinking and non-distraction, or we also perhaps should schedule time for distraction so that we don't miss it when we don't have it. So anyway, we can turn our attention to where we want it to be, which again may be experiencing boredom again. And then how we do that, we can think about how we do that in a sustainable and fulfilling fashion. So first of all, I think that we need to acknowledge that sitting alone with our thoughts, being bored, is just plain uncomfortable. It is not pleasurable. Okay, that's what Pascal was saying. Okay, it might be great for our brain and our creativity and all of that, but it doesn't feel very good. Okay.
Well,
There
I
is
would
a Harvard.
say, in my experience, it doesn't feel very good the first minute, and then
Yeah, well, the first minute or 15 minutes, or then the first few minutes, we can feel good for a while, and then we don't. Listen, I have done long meditation, and believe me, it is not always very comfortable. Okay, so let's acknowledge that. I mean, I don't want to say this is going to feel good and go out and be pleasure,
you're right.
find pleasure in boredom. No, Okay. There was a Harvard study. We'll put the link in the in the show notes, that found that people's minds wandered during about 47% of their waking moments. So, by the way, you are a mind-wandering machine as well. You can do this. Okay. And on average, people were less happy when their minds were elsewhere than where they wanted them to be. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily make us happy. Actually, it probably makes us unhappy if we're wandering all the time. So anyway, all of that put together, I think there are a few steps to follow. One is being aware of what we're doing. So, another is maybe scheduling these kinds of times. But basically, it comes down to moving from randomly taking whatever is on offer to actually consciously nurturing where we want to put our attention. That takes energy. I know we don't like to expend energy, which is why we much prefer to randomly do it. However, okay, this is the idea. And secondly, it requires acknowledging that attention, like paying attention to something, has no real intrinsic feel-good value to it. Okay, it's not going to make us feel good or feel bad. What that means is that we can pay attention even when it's uncomfortable. And that's what I'm saying. It's much easier for us to pay attention when it's pleasurable, but we can also do it when it's uncomfortable. It is completely separate from the feeling. And when you do that, then, when we get bored and we can actually pay attention to being uncomfortable and how uncomfortable it is to sitting alone with our thoughts. Anyway, if you separate the two, it actually becomes easier.
So basically what you're saying is eat your vegetables.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Okay, let's circle back to tech. Because even if technology itself is not totally responsible, I would venture to say that more often than not, more tech can be too much tech, right? And so inserting tech, as we defined it today, computers basically, inserting that everywhere isn't always the proper answer. And it's the topic of another article I wanted to talk about, which was featured in The Atlantic, entitled "What Happened After a Teacher Ditched Screens." And let me read you the beginning. Quote, "For more than a decade, Dylan Kane, a 7th grade math teacher in Leadville, Colorado, leaned into technology as a way to improve his classes. Starting in 2014, he dragged Chromebook carts down hallways to make sure all of his students could use a device. He assessed the available apps, built his own math instruction website, and embedded software to prevent kids from playing games or exploring inappropriate sites. He kept adapters around the room so everyone could charge up. Then, in January, he took the Chromebooks away. He had sensed that the technology was falling short of its promises. Within weeks of ditching the screens, he saw how they had been holding both him and his students back. End quote. I really encourage everyone to read this and to reflect on another example of how trying to put technology everywhere is not always the answer. And we'll put the link in the show notes, obviously. And so I really related to that. And I was wondering if does this make me a Luddite? And I would say maybe, and actually I would claim the title because I don't know if you knew that, but there's a big misconception of actually what it means to be a Luddite. The term Luddite is used today to describe anyone who avoids, dislikes, or is bad at using modern technology. I would not put myself in that category. And
No.
it's stemming from British textile workers in the early 1810s who started to destroy the new mechanized looms and knitting frames, afraid that those new machines would replace them. Ring any bell?
Yes.
Right?
How we keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Exactly. But in fact, the original Luddites were not exactly opposed to technology itself. They were opposed to how factory owners use technology to bypass fair wages, lower the quality of goods, and put skilled workers out of a job.
Yeah, I'm reminded, obviously, of what AI is doing these days. And, you know, that it resonates so much. And what I'm thinking about right now is how IKEA, used a whole bunch of AI, but did not fire their workers, but rather retrain them to do something else. And I'm like, oh, actually, this is kind of cool. That's kind of a Luddite way of doing it. I mean, what would be promoted by Luddites is, so use the tool, but in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, as we both started this slow AI movement, episode 33,
Yes.
maybe we could also start the less is more tech movement.
I don't think we'd be the first ones there, but
No,
yes, okay.
But so let's do it anyway. And so the idea would be we would actually think a bit more before we add a new tech tool to our life. Why don't we think about it?
I think we've actually talked about that on a previous episode, and we've certainly talked about it so many times, and still we add new tech tools to our lives.
Exactly.
Anyway, okay. That's it for episode 40. Thank you all for joining us. Please do visit humanpulsepodcast.com for links and past episodes.
And thank you for subscribing and reviewing wherever you listen to our podcast. It helps other people find us. You can also share it with one person around you.
Or more people around you. Thank you very much. See you in more or less 2 weeks.
Bye, everyone.